So, hi, and we'll be getting started in a minute or two. So we'll be talking today about the speaking task number 4, which is about a reading passage and a lecture from a professor. So in the chat area below the video, you can comment with Facebook and VK. So please let me know where you are from, where you're located, and what your plans are for taking the TOEFL. So if you're planning on taking that soon, please let me know. And if you've seen some of the other videos, the other lessons that we've done the last few Wednesdays, please let me know so I can kind of keep an eye on your progress and keep an eye on some of your questions. We're getting started in like a minute or two. I see there's more and more people joining. People getting the announcements that this is starting soon. So yeah, please leave a comment. Let me know who you are and what your plans are for the TOEFL. So I'll be refreshing the screen here to see if there's comments so far. And like we did last time, you'll have an opportunity to give me some audio, like an example of one of your answers, so I can give you some feedback on that. So we've been using the SpeakPipe voice recording tool. That's a free tool that you can use online, and you can send a link to an audio file. And that's been there's been some good results with that in the last few lessons that we've done. So I see some comment here from Tubanov from Kazakhstan. So hi, thanks for joining us. And let us know if you're planning on taking the TOEFL soon. And if you have taken it before, feel free to let me know what your scores were, and if you plan on taking it again, if you need to, what section you need to focus on. So okay, well, we've got about a lot of people to get started with. So my big news is that from last week on Friday, 2 days after we did our last lesson, I took the TOEFL. So in addition to all the training I've been doing for lots of students who've taken the test, it was now my turn to take it. So I had all of the nervousness, anxiety, concerns about arriving on time, making sure I was at the right location, having all the documents, my passport, and getting to breakfast, and all of those little concerns about the test experience, and then being there in front of the computer. And even if I've gone through lots of the practice tests and using my computer and listening to materials, reading materials, and helping students with the speaking and writing, and doing my own speaking recordings and essays, you can't quite get that full experience until you actually do it. So I had a lot of observations from there. So here I see Elena from Volgograd. So yeah, hi. I think you were perhaps there last time in the other lesson. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but thanks for joining us today. So yeah, I'm just going to mention a few things from my experience last Friday of taking the test. And I was kind of nervous the night before. So make sure you get enough sleep. Really put your cell phone down, turn off the computer, turn off things like that the night before you have to take the test. Just get a good night's sleep. You don't want to be like extra anxious or nervous about that. Make sure you get like a proper dinner, a proper breakfast the day of the test. I was even a bit nervous about cooking in the morning. I didn't want to touch any knives. I didn't want to accidentally cut my fingers, because you need to type on the test. You also need to like be taking notes on some scratch paper. So yeah, make sure your fingers are in good condition. You don't want to accidentally have some problem and not be able to type. Another thing on here, I did find the reading section at the beginning to be a bit dense in terms of the content. There were 3 passages that to work on. The first 2 were of an anthropology, sociology nature, and cultural history. I see some more people joining here, Dennis and Vladimir. So hi, thanks for joining us. And so yeah, the reading passage, it was a bit difficult for me to just get straight into the test, start focusing, and get into a very heavy reading. So it was a lot of details, a lot of content to be aware of. We will go into reading tips, reading strategies in a separate lesson, but I would say one big piece of advice that I would give to students now, based on going through that experience, is don't just read newspapers or novels or magazines, because you do need to focus more on academic content, and even a little heavy academic content, because you need to be able to filter and process lots of details, lots of information in a small amount of space. And in terms of preparing yourself for that experience, don't just read in the comfort of your home and in a book and where there's no distractions and no noise, because that's not going to be like the test environment. So you do need to kind of read text that is on the screen, half the screen, and with really not many spaces. So it's a pretty big size font. You don't really have any spaces between paragraphs. You just have this chunk of space on your, and you need to focus, and you're scrolling up and down for the text, but it isn't quite the same experience you get when you read a newspaper or read a book, and you have space and you can see the whole page, and you can get an idea of how much content you need to look at. So just be able to kind of get yourself in those experience for your practice, and also realize like you might not have the best conditions. I've heard from other students in terms of problems with the air conditioning unit. So maybe it was too hot outside, so it wasn't nice and comfortable inside the room, or maybe there's too much of an air conditioning. So maybe you need an extra sweater or something. In the testing center where I was located, there was actually some construction work going on, on 2 or 3 floors above where I was located. So I could hear a drill going, and that was just really not good for concentration. So you really need to work on your kind of mental, get your mind ready for almost as if you had to prepare for being like a soldier or something. So be ready for all kinds of conditions that would be less than ideal. So if you are somebody who needs peace and quiet and concentration, you can try to wear like the headset to try to block out some of the background noise. But you do need to kind of condition yourself to be ready for not the perfect situation. So try to put yourself in that as much as you can for the reading. I would definitely say that the reading section ended up being my probably the most difficult section for me. I mean, as a native speaker and training students, I would say that preparing students for the speaking and the writing section has given me a lot of opportunity to see what works, what doesn't, and to get better strategies. I see more people joining here. Hi, Danata from Moscow. So Thanks for joining us. And Victor from Ukraine. So great. Yeah, there's a lot of people here joining us. So yeah, I would say the reading section, yeah, just be ready to be in a situation where you might not be concentrating. It might be early in the morning. So like make sure you get a good breakfast so that you can concentrate. If you're a coffee or tea drinker, I would say be careful with that, because like you won't have the opportunity to go use the bathroom until the 10-minute break. And make sure to bring yourself some like bottled water or a snack. I unfortunately didn't do that, but then they said, hey, go. There's a 7-Eleven at the next to the building, so I picked up some things, and I was early enough before the test, so I did have that opportunity to go buy some things. But I think another thing that I was concerned about was that like all of my belongings, like my wallet, my cell phone, money, it was just in a kind of a small container or like a cubby, kind of like on a shelf. And when I came out for the 10-minute break, I didn't see the people who were organizing the test. I didn't see them there supervising my belongings. So that made me a little nervous about like, well, I just put my sweater on top of my stuff, but obviously a sweater is not enough to protect your belongings. So some other people have their stuff in a backpack. If that can kind of give you some more peace of mind that all your stuff is there. But yeah, you probably don't want to bring too many items that you wouldn't want stolen while you're taking the test. That's another concern that probably doesn't come up a lot in these TOEFL prep discussions, but you just kind of take the essentials. You're just enough money to get you there and back to the test center, your cell phone if you need to contact somebody to say, hey, I'm finished, come pick me up, and also maybe just a few snacks to kind of keep your energy up in between the listening section and the speaking writing section. Okay, well, but yeah, overall, I would say it was a very good experience to go through the test, see which sections like I'm going to hopefully do well on as a native speaker, but also just take a lot of that advice that I can use to put into these other lessons for students. So yeah, as you've seen, yeah, Elena, yeah, I've seemed to have kind of taken into account all the things that could come up for the test and that full experience now. So, okay. And I see another person here, Alexei, joining, planning on taking the TOEFL in spring. So yeah, this should be, let me know when in spring. So kind of if you have weeks or months to prepare. So, okay. Well, today, let's get into today's lesson about speaking task 4. So for those of you who haven't seen the previous lessons, we started off with a general introduction to what TOEFL was, what it is, how it kind of compares to the IELTS and some of the Cambridge certificates. So that was like the test lesson kind of number 1. That was a couple of weeks ago. And since then, we've been focusing on the speaking section, which is where I spend a lot of time with students. So we've gone through the task 1, which was the general conversation topic, not conversation, sorry, but general topic to talk about something familiar, your family, like a place, an object, some famous person, some event. We've talked about the limited choice, where some people like this, some people like that. Which one do you prefer and why? We've gone through that one. Last week, we were looking at the conversation based on a campus-related announcement. So that would be like the university's new policy regarding this, and 2 students discuss that. One of them maybe agrees or disagrees, and they state their reasons. So that was last week. So if you see at the top the link for this for the page, you can go through and change the numbers back. So this is the 5th lesson. At the top, it should say like number 6. If you switch that number, you can see the previous videos that we've done. And okay, I also see somebody mentioning that they're taking the GRE. Unfortunately, I don't have much experience with the GRE. I have mainly experience with TOEFL. and I've also taken the IELTS, so I do know those differences between those two exams. But we will see for perhaps other recommendations we can give you for the GRE if you have some specific questions. But I will probably relay those questions to another teacher who's more experienced with the GRE. Okay, so today we're doing the task number 4, which is an academic question. So you have a reading passage that you have about like 45 seconds to go through. There's usually a concept that's being explained, and then you have a lecture that you listen to with a professor who's usually going to explain that concept, give some maybe some like an anecdotal experience that the professor had and how that explains this concept, or maybe this concept can be divided into a general and specific interpretation or use or application, and the professor will give details about that and explanations. And then it's your job as you're taking notes afterwards to kind of get your notes into a bit of an outline and then be able to explain, combine, integrate information from the reading and from the professor's lecture and put that information together for 60 seconds to deliver your answer. So that's basically what we're going to be looking at today, talking about this today, and kind of what to cover. And we'll give you an opportunity to use the SpeakPipe tool so that you can send us a recording, and I can give you some feedback, live feedback during this section. So thanks. Also more people joining, Roma, Rika, Alexandra. So yeah, I see another question here about the GRE and GMAT. We'll probably have to take that question in more detail for another discussion. But thank you for the question. We'll keep an eye on that. So okay, I'm going to share my screen so you can start to see some of the slides. You won't see me, you'll hear me, but you'll see the information that I want to present to you. And then when we get back towards the end of this presentation, this is about 10 slides or so, then we'll get back and let you guys kind of ask me some more questions, and I'll answer them related more specifically to the TOEFL prep. And okay, and another person joining, so Vitalina, so thanks for joining us. So thank you everybody who's here, and feel free to leave your questions in the text box. I have 2 computer screens, so I can keep an eye on my presentation and also your comments. So great. Okay. So as I change here and share my screen, please let me know in the comments that I can see your screen. That gives me a good idea that you can see my screen. So I'm going to do that right now. And let's go here. Okay, so let me know, please, if you can see my screen. I think I can see it, yeah, on the video there briefly. And I'm going to try to maximize this so you can see there. So, okay, yes. Is that plus from Elena? Is that a yes that we can see? Okay, Roma, yes, I can see that. Great, thank you guys for letting me know that. Okay, so yes, we're here, TOEFL lesson number 5, and we're talking about speaking task number 4. So, okay, so those of you who don't know me, just bear with me with this little introduction. But so I'm an American English teacher from California, from Southern California, outside of like the LA area. But I haven't been living in the States since 2002. I've been living abroad, teaching English abroad. I lived in France for 6 years, and I taught there in schools and language schools and businesses. And I've been living in Mexico City since 2008, and I've been also teaching with businesses and people preparing for the TOEFL. And I've also been starting to teach online since living here. And I've also worked as a translator, mostly from Spanish to English and French to English. I also do some programming for like language learning web apps, some things related to grammar. But yeah, that's basically me in a nutshell. And mainly this last year has been heavily involved in TOEFL prep for a lot of students who've been wanting to go study in the United States. And I've been very happy to have a lot of students who've been scoring above 100 points and even higher. We even had one student who scored even 119. That was incredible. So yeah, we've had a lot of dedicated students who've been really motivated to get really high scores, and so we've been kind of taking their experiences and kind of getting that information, getting their feedback, so we can help even more students involved. So that's how things are going right now for the training. Okay, so next. So here today we're looking at the speaking task number 4. So basically this is you are summarizing a concept that is coming from like a reading passage and an academic lecture. You'll have you will have 45 seconds to look at that reading passage, which is pretty short. Then you will listen to a professor's lecture, which could be about like 1.5 to 2 minutes. I would strongly recommend taking some notes while you're listening and while you're reading through the passage. Kind of get what is the concept, what is it you need to know about that, what are they like, if it's separated into 2 examples. And then as you are listening to the lecture, maybe put like a line on your scratch paper or an extra piece of scratch paper to kind of separate them between the reading and the lecture. And then you'll have a question after that. And here are about like 4 or 5 examples, so you can see how that might look like on the test. So there's examples that could be the professor discussed the characteristics of blah, 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 explain how those characteristics are related to this concept, explain how the examples from the professor's lecture illustrate the relationship between X and Y, or use the professor's examples, explain the something technique of XYZ, and using the example of A, explain what is meant by B, and using the examples of A and B, explain the idea of C. So that's basically some of the main ways that this question could be used after you go through the reading passage and the lecture. So you'll basically have some concept, and there'll probably be like 2 ways to interpret that. And usually the professor's going to give like some anecdote or give some detailed explanation about how that concept is different or how it can be applied. Okay, so any questions so far there about how the task number 4 is kind of organized or what it is about? I think it's pretty straightforward, but if there's any questions so far, please let me know. But otherwise, yeah, we'll move on to the next part here. So what is it that you kind of need to keep in mind when you're preparing your answer? So ETS prepares these speaking rubrics, and we'll also look at them later when we're looking at the writing rubrics. But it's a good idea to take a look at this. You can go to their website, the ets.org/s/TOEFL/PDF/TOEFL_speaking_rubrics.pdf. I should just kind of copy that so you can just go straight to it if you want, because on my screen it might be a little small, but I'll get that so you can just not have to copy it, but actually just click on it and get it for yourself. So yeah. Okay, so yeah, I'll copy and paste that link into the text chat here, so you can just get that. So this is the ETS speaking rubrics. So that might be a little easier for you to see on your own screen instead of just the way it appears in the video. Okay. Okay, so as you can see on there, and maybe you want to click and look at that on your own screen because it might appear a little small on mine. So basically, to get like the highest scores, because on the speaking section, the highest score you can get is a score of 4. Then later it's calculated and calibrated for like a score out of 30, but this highest scores you get is a number 4. And so the things that you want to be aware of is how you're delivering your answer, how you use English, how you use like your use of the language in terms of grammar, vocabulary, and also how you're developing your answer. So in this case, it's like how you're able to combine information from the reading and the lecture and use the relevant details that are in there, and also making sure that your answer is kind of coherent and it's easy to follow, it's clear. If you're speaking and you have some pauses, you kind of want to speak as fluidly as possible. You don't want to have problems with pronunciation or intonation. Keep your pacing kind of like your pacing is how you like how fast you go, how slow you go with your speaking. You want to keep it kind of moderate so that you're not going like too fast, too slow, but you might have a few variations there. And just make sure that your answer is kind of easy to follow, easy to understand. And if you need to articulate, meaning like open your mouth or make an effort to pronounce words more clearly, please do so so that the examiner has the best audio answer that you can give them. And I would strongly recommend recording yourself doing these answers as frequently as you can. I would say at least like once a day, and listen to how you sound. And if like a couple of days go by and then you listen to your audio again and you forget what you said, but like you're listening to it with fresh ears, I would say that's a good way to kind of get an idea of how you will sound to an examiner who doesn't know you, and they won't have the opportunity to ask you questions like, oh, what did you mean by this word? Or I'm sorry, I didn't understand that word. They won't have the opportunity to talk to you at all. So the only opportunity that they can hear you speak and give your answer is this recording. So it's very important that you give like the best answer you can on there. So these are basically the details that they're going to be looking at and judging you on and assessing, evaluating your answer. So that's basically we've looked at the format. Now we've looked at what the examiner is listening for. And so let's get into a little bit of the kind of the strategies of what you want to include in your answer. So you need to integrate this information from both the reading and the lecture. So what that means is you need to kind of get the main details. You need to know what the concept is from the reading. You need to state clearly how it's being explained by the professor in the lecture. You want the most relevant points and examples. You don't want all of the details. You don't want all the tiny little unimportant pieces of information. You need to focus on just the most important one. So one example I give, like right now you can't see me, I'm just explaining this, but one thing is I explain like a 1 liter bottle of water compared to a cup. And if you look at the 1 liter of water, you can't possibly get all of that content into a small cup. So what I mean by that is you have to filter, you have to extract what is most important. You can't just repeat verbatim what is in the reading text and what is in the professor's lecture, because also in terms of what I mean by this, like 1 liter into a cup, if you look at the timing, you've got like 45 seconds to read this short passage, and you've got about 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes of audio content from a professor. You can't possibly put 2.5 minutes to 3 minutes worth of content into 60 seconds if you were just going to repeat it verbatim. And what I mean is like exactly what they said is the way you said. You do have to put things into your own words. You do have to rephrase them, summarize them. You do have to make an effort to just pick the most important details. Or also another way I've seen this written is sufficient details. So what is enough to get the idea across? You don't need all of it. You just need to get the most important aspects that are going to be able to explain that idea to a friend or in a classroom setting. So a good way to practice this a little bit is to kind of go through some of these readings and maybe practice with watching I don't know, like a TED Talk about some concept, and then take 5 minutes worth of that material and go tell a friend what you just watched. And are you able to explain that concept that you saw, or some of those main ideas? Are you able to explain that clearly and easily in less than a minute? If not, that's maybe something you need to practice doing. So you do need some variety in your vocabulary, so you don't always repeat the same words. You do want to practice your pronunciation, how you articulate words, and very importantly, how you organize your ideas. Are they logical? Are they easy to follow? So each one of those aspects of your answer, if you have a problem with that, you need to focus on that and work on it, improve it so it gets easier over time. So that's what you kind of need to include in your answer here. So next is some kind of template phrases and how to structure your answer. So this first kind of template is coming from the like the Cracking the TOEFL book. This is basically state what the concept is, include one of the characteristics. This should be singular, sorry. Characteristic number 1 from the reading, the detail from the lecture, next another characteristic from the reading, and then another detail from the lecture. You can kind of go back and forth how they get developed. And if there happens to be a third characteristic and a third point, then you can add to that as well. But most of the time I've seen answers that are usually like 2 concepts or 2 examples. So some of the phrases that you could use are things like, okay, the reading is about, or the passage discusses, the professor discussed. So that's another thing I've seen sometimes is some students want to use this in the past tense. Some students prefer to do this in the present tense. I would say consistency is the key to your answer. So if you decide to put everything in the past tense, go ahead, do that. And if you decide to keep everything in the present tense, make sure just everything is in present tense. I do sometimes recommend to students, like if they have some hesitation on their grammar in terms of like, oh, what's the irregular past tense of some verb? If they have some hesitation on that, it might be easier to just keep everything in the present tense. That's like one little hack that I do recommend to a few students of just like, if you have some hesitation on your irregular past tense verbs, go ahead and just keep it in the present tense. So, okay, another expressions you could use, okay, according to the reading or according to the professor, and then getting into the specifics of like, okay, there are 2 characteristics of this concept, and one aspect of this concept is, or another characteristic, and then explain how that is important, because, and then, or maybe, okay, this is a good example of that. So, and there's other transition words that I haven't included on this slide, but you might want to be able to use those as well to kind of link between your ideas and how they connect between the reading and the lecture. Just, yeah, make sure you're quoting and citing where this information comes from, and be very careful not to include information that does not come from the reading or lecture. What I mean by that is only present information that comes from the reading passage or the lecture. So none of this is your opinion. None of this is like stuff that you read somewhere else, like you might include in an essay. This is just purely information that you read and that you listened to, and you're combining both of them and presenting it and summarizing it. So this is not your opinion. This is not information that you found somewhere else on there. Okay. So, okay. And what we're going to try out now to see is using this SpeakPipe tool. So I'll put this link here. Just so you can click on this and not have to type it. So here's this SpeakPipe voice recorder. In case like you're on VK or on Facebook, you can see this. So as you click on that link, you'll have a button that says Start Recording. It will have access to your microphone. Then as you're speaking, You can see this timer here. So if you get up to about 45 seconds, 60 seconds, then you can click stop. If you want to, you can listen to your recording, make sure that it was recording, that the audio worked. Otherwise, you can click skip. And then the next thing that pops up is you'll see this, this file for your recording. I would click save on server. Then you can include your name if you want, that's not necessary. And then click save. Then it will process this and upload it to the server. And then it will give you a link. Make sure you get this full link that has about like 14, 15 characters on there, like alphanumeric. Get that and paste it into the comments below this video. And then I can listen to your audio file. So I'm going to give you an example question for this task 4 you can listen to. And so one more time here. So you just click this, click start recording. Then when you're finished, click stop. Then the next thing, click skip. That'll bring you to the next step where you can upload and save on the server. You can include your name if you want. You don't have to. Then finally click save, and it will process that, and it will give you this link to your audio file. And then I can listen to that, and then I can give you feedback on your speaking and pronunciation. So hopefully there will be a couple brave people here who are willing to get their audio, get their speaking answer for this task 4, kind of get my feedback here live during this session. Okay, so let me give you this example question. This is coming from the website Exam English. They've got a lot of good speaking examples. I'll give you this link so that if you want to read it and see it on your own screen, that's fine. So this is just putting that here so you can see this. So if you prefer to do there. Okay, so I'll read this. I mean, you would just be reading it to yourself, but I'll just read it out loud so you can, in case somebody doesn't have access or can see it very well. So this reading passage, this would take about 45 seconds, and this would be, okay, VAK theory, or VAK. So one theory of learning states that we use 3 sensory receivers, visual, V, auditory, A, and kinesthetic, K, when we take in information. According to the VAK theory, 1 or 2 of these receiving styles is normally dominant and thus defines the best way for a person to learn new information. Thus, a visual learner learns best using their sight, an auditory learner learns best when listening, and a kinesthetic learner learns best through physical activity. So VAK, or VAK, is one of the most popular learning models nowadays due to its simplicity. Teachers are beginning to incorporate a range of stimuli and activities into their lessons so as to cater for all types of learners. Although it is not yet proven that using one's preferred sense provides the best means for learning, having a range of activities can reduce boredom and increase motivation in the classroom. So if I were taking notes on that, I would have those 3 concepts like visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and maybe refer to this, okay, this is how somebody learns new information, and say, okay, visual, sight, so they have to see this. Auditory, listening, and kinesthetic is physical activity. So those would probably be the like the little concept that I would put in my notes. And then now I'll play the audio file for you. So hopefully this works fine.
An example of how you might go about this is, well, I'll describe a lesson I observed a few weeks ago. The teacher was teaching children about nature, about plants, specifically about how to identify different trees. The first thing she did was to play a game where students had to name as many trees as they could without writing anything down, just speaking out loud. Then after that little activity, she described the different ways you can identify trees, from the shape of their leaves, their buds, their bark, and so on. But you can imagine that the kids who don't have very good imaginations, they couldn't really visualize what she was talking about. Their minds were starting to wander. They were shuffling in their seats and getting distracted, but that was okay, because next she showed some photos for them to look at on the electronic whiteboard, then passed around some picture books. Students then copied some of the pictures into their exercise books. And after that, students got the chance to go out into the school grounds and physically identify some of the trees that were there. So it was quite an effective lesson, very memorable. And the pupils looked very engaged. A week later, I asked one of them to describe to me the leaf of an oak tree, and she did so perfectly.
Okay, so that's an example of of the lecture, and then the question that you would see on your screen says explain VAC theory and how the example used by the professor illustrates how the theory can be applied. So now you would have about 30 seconds to go through your notes, and then you would have 60 seconds to prepare your answer. So hopefully there will be people who will use that SpeakPipe tool so that they can give us an example of their own speaking, and then we can comment on that. So a few things that I would have in my notes would be how this one teacher had used this technique in the classroom in terms of talking about these different types of trees, and then showing pictures of what leaves look like, and then finally taking the students out to actually look and touch trees. And so those would be my notes from the professor's lecture. And then I would have to develop that into like a 60-second answer to say like, okay, in more detail, what is VAC theory? Okay, VAC theory is an idea that different types of students learn in different ways. So people who are visual need to see things. People who are auditory need to listen to information, and people who have a more kinesthetic preference need to have some physical activity where they like hands-on activities to learn to do things through a physical action. And the professor gives this one example about this one teacher who uses this theory in the classroom in order to talk about the trees and explain this for students who are needing audio explanation. Then for the students who didn't quite understand that, she switched to showing pictures of leaves, and that was easier for some students to understand through a visual stimuli. And some students even copied those examples into their notebooks. And finally, the student also took the students out of the classroom to visit the trees that were on the campus. And those students were able to touch and feel the leaves and get a better idea of what they looked like and smelled like and what that experience was. And combining those three elements of that theory was a very successful way for the students to understand the concept being taught. So I think I probably spent over a minute explaining my answer there, but that was basically combining the information of what the theory is and how this professor explained this teacher how that was used in there. Okay, do we have any people who would like to get their own answer evaluated? So please feel free to use that SpeakPipe tool. I put the link here. So we were lucky to have a few examples last time and the previous time so that I can play this and give some feedback on there. Okay. But I also see some other questions coming up about, for example, pass the IELTS and also the TOEFL. Yes, I have helped some other students with their IELTS prep. However, since I have mainly focused on the TOEFL recently, but yeah, that is something that I can do. I'll have also helped students with their IELTS prep, especially for like the conversational part and the writing section. Just like let me know if you are working on like the academic or the general IELTS, And yeah, I took the IELTS about a year ago for the general version, and I was able to score a 9 on speaking, a 9 on listening, a 9 on reading, and I got like an 8 on the writing section. So that's something I'll go into more details when we get to the writing section about like what to do on your independent task of being like interpreting that task too creatively or not, and sticking to something just very academic. But okay, I have an example here from Yuri. So thank you for giving us an audio file. So I'll play this so everybody can hear. Okay.
The back theory tells us that there are different kinds of human, and there are 3 types. The people who can better get information in auditory when they're hearing information, people who can better understand information when they have pictures illustrate, and the 3rd type is when people do something by themselves, then they can understand. And the professor told us about the teacher in the biological class who firstly told the students about the different types of trees. Then she showed them some pictures, and later some of the students went to the park or to the forest, and there they could discover trees by themselves.
Okay, yeah. Well, thank you very much for providing your audio example here, Yuri. A few comments that I would make, and I will now kind of take my screen off here so you can see me. So let me go back here. So hi again, you guys can see me. So one thing that I would recognize first is maybe using the word human. I do know that I think in Russian, I think like person, and people with like человек and люди. I would stick to using the word like person or people for that. So that like there's 3 types of people, and then going into further that discussion for like your vocabulary, I would say that the word person, people is it's a general word. I think in this context, you might want to get into a more specific word like learner or student. So like there's 3 types of students, or there's 3 types of ways to learn, or 3 different learning techniques. So that could be maybe not just people, but maybe since this is a theory and it's related to learning, so you could use some vocabulary or synonyms related to learning techniques or teaching strategy, or so having some of that vocabulary, that'd be a little more specialized instead of just using there's 3 types of people. Because in this specific context, we're looking at the learning process. Next, what was something on there? When talking about the kinesthetic, I think you mentioned that like people could learn by themselves or alone, because I think you also mentioned that later on in the when they went to the forest or the park. So I think that concept, that explanation of doing something by themselves or alone might be imprecise or not clear enough. So I think it would be important to say that there was like physical activity or hands-on or like doing something physically as a way to explain that concept, because I think just doing something by themselves is not clear enough. I think there was also a term for the biology class, not a biological class. Biological would be the adjective for a process or a product, something like that. But in terms of a subject matter being taught by a professor, this would be a biology class on there. And something else that I noticed. But overall, your pronunciation is clear. The pacing was you were able to keep speaking for that like 60 seconds. You were able to explain what the concept does and the example that was provided by the professor. So that was good. So yeah, you have a lot of the details that are in there. Just I would be careful on that little that one tiny detail that was in there about like whether this was do something by themselves versus, okay, no, kinesthetic is physical. So that was a key relevant detail as part of that concept. And I think that was also being provided in the reading passage. So just be careful with your notes so you could get that concept there, so you wouldn't accidentally skip that or rephrase it in an ambiguous way. Okay. Okay, here's a question from Roma about whether I would take the TOEFL or the IELTS, and which one would I choose, and which one would be easier. So that's a very, very big question, because it takes into account what each person's, like, what their goals are or how they're going to use the results of that test. I would say if you're planning on going to study in the United States, probably you're going to be taking the TOEFL. That's more widely accepted by American universities. There are some universities in the States that are starting to accept the IELTS, but principally IELTS is more widely accepted in non-American countries. So Canada, England, Australia, also around some universities in Europe. They might have some preference for the IELTS as well. And in terms of easier, I'm not quite sure. I think they're both equally difficult. It's also depends on you in terms of, like, are you a good speaker? Are you a good writer? And also with speaking, are you comfortable recording your voice with a computer, or do you prefer talking to a human? So for the IELTS, you have conversation with a live examiner who's kind of guiding you through a conversation and keeping you kind of focus your answers. Whereas on the TOEFL, you just have your recording with the headset and microphone for the computer. And it's just very time sensitive. So you're like 45 seconds, 60 seconds for your answers. And for your writing skills, are you good at writing by hand? Is your writing legible? So on the IELTS, you do have to write with like pencil paper, and are your typing skills good? So the TOEFL is typing. However, you do have to take notes on scratch paper for a couple of the sections. So that's a concern. Yeah, it's just like, where do you plan on studying? If you plan on studying in the States or in other countries like Canada or IELTS, or Canada or England or Australia, those would probably be using the IELTS results more. But it's also a very personal question. Like, I would need to know more about a specific person and their goals, what they're doing that time. Okay, we have another audio example here from Alexei. So let me just listen to this. Okay. It looks like it says this is, let me just try this on a different format here. Okay, yeah.
So the passage is about back theory, which stands for visual, auditory, and kinesthetic means of gathering information from the world around us. According to the professor, one of the good examples of the theory, how the theory works, is that teacher use this theory to teach kids. Some kids are better in drawing something, for instance, trees, as it was in the professor's page. Some kids are better in touching the trees and seeing how it grows, and some kids are better in just memorizing the names of the trees and hearing the description of how the tree looks. And so the first kids, they are.
Okay, so yeah, thank you very much for your audio sample there, Alexei. So my first few comments might be, okay, your pacing is a bit slow, and you do have some pauses throughout. So I would recommend maybe making these recordings more frequently, so you can kind of get through on there. And also the information that you provided in there, I think there was saying like, okay, some kids are better at this, some kids are better at that, like some kids are better at touching the trees, or some kids are better at memorizing the names of the trees. I think that answer is kind of, it's not 100% like the way that concept is in this classroom. I think is some kids are good at visual information. So the way that's applied means that in this specific lesson for this teacher, it means that they learned better with visual information. So it means like showing pictures of trees helped those students. It's not exactly that some kids are better at touching trees. It's kind of the opposite. I hope that concept is kind of, I'm explaining that clearly to say like, okay, some kids are better at hands-on physical activity, which means to apply that concept, it would be touching trees, seeing them in a forest would be a better way for those students to learn. It's not quite that like this student is bad at touching trees so that they don't learn. So that concept got kind of explained in a slightly confusing way. I understand the concept because we've gone through this here, but I think that explanation was maybe not 100% kind of accurate for this information. And your pronunciation, I would say it was clear, but I would work on linking sounds, which means like the ends of words and how they're connecting to the next word so that your flow is a little faster. So there's a lot of things you can look online, Google, like linking sounds with speaking, linking sounds, and that would probably help you speak a little faster so you could deliver more content. I also think your answer was probably going to get cut off at the 60 seconds. So it didn't quite feel like you might have like finished, fully developed your answer there. So, okay. And let me listen to one last example here from Inessa. And so, hi Inessa. So she's taken lessons before. It's great to see you. I do see that this is like an answer that's going to be over a minute long. So the answer itself needs to be within 60 seconds. So I'm going to cut this off at 60 seconds, but we can play in here. Okay.
The lecture is a lecture about different ways of learning. Visual people can learn best through looking at something. Older learners can learn best when hear something, and kinesthetic learners learn best by doing something. The theory suggests teachers use different ways of study with students, but in example, we see that teacher use.
Okay, I'm gonna have to actually, unfortunately, pause here, but I think my first comments would be that you have the information. That's good. You have what the concept is and how this applies to the different students. But I think in terms of the timing and how fast you're able to speak, this explanation would probably cover up at least 3/4 to almost all of the 60 seconds that would be allocated for your answer. So this answer, if it were cut off at 6 seconds, it would probably be incomplete. Like you haven't yet gotten to the professor and the professor's example about this other teacher. So speaking a little faster so you can cover all that information would be important there to say, okay, within like 20 seconds to say, okay, this theory is about this, this, and this. And this applies to students. So for these types of students, this, these types of students, this, these types of students, this. And the professor refers to how this could be applied as a teaching technique. And one example that the professor gives is, and so in my explanation, that information, that introduction there should be at least, if it goes past halfway of like 30 seconds, then I'm taking time away from what the professor said, what the examples were, and how this relates to the reading passage. So you do need to get a balance in terms of how your timing is. So as you see the time clicking and going down for like 60, 30 seconds to 0, you need to know, where should I be in terms of my template? Where should I be in the introduction? So again, I would recommend kind of recording yourself more frequently, and also make sure you're using the timer so you can see how you're managing your time. So, okay, well, that's about all the time that we have for today. So thank you very much, everybody who has provided an audio sample. So Yuri, Alexei, Inessa. I think these are some good examples to give us an idea of like some of the organization, the pronunciation, and the timing there. And if you have any other questions here related to the TOEFL, please feel free to leave them here. I can see them. And I see that there were other questions related to other exams like the GRE, GMAT, and IELTS. We can provide more content. I'll work on that with Marina to see kind of what videos and what information people would like to know, and we can dedicate other training for that specifically. But next week, we will be looking at the task number 5 for the speaking. So that will be another campus-related question where there might be a problem or a situation to resolve, and 2 people are talking, discussing this, and one of them gives like 2 solutions, and then you have to kind of summarize that and give your opinion on which solution you would choose. So that would be task. About that next week. But thanks everybody for joining and for watching, and please feel free to leave your comments, your questions, and thank you. So we'll see you next week. Take care.